Welcome to this introduction to adopting service governance. Best practice advice from AXELOS, part of the well-respected ITIL library. This brief introduction to adopting service governance mainly deals with the example, the case study of ABC Retail, but it's worthwhile just having a quick look at the definition of service governance before getting into the example. As we identify at the bottom, the most important part of service governance is that it uses for each service the ratio of the value and the cost to understand how well a service is performing. If it's delivering a lot more value than cost, it's clearly a very valuable service. If it's producing less value than cost, then it's questionable whether you should be providing the service at all. The service portfolio contains all of the services across the organization, both the services provided to customers, internal services, and services delivered from outside by suppliers. The service portfolio is designed according to the requirements of the organization. It is a management system itself for monitoring and controlling performance and delivery, but it enables the governance of the organization through this portfolio. You might say organizations already have a general ledger which provides the measure and control of corporate financial performance. But what we'll see is that, yes, indeed, there is a general ledger, but the service portfolio provides a much clearer and more thorough understanding of the organization than is possible with the conventional general ledger. So let's go on to the case study or example, ABC Retail. ABC Retail is a company based in one town, British. Its short history is here, and then the vision, mission, and charter. This is particularly important with service governance because when services are designed, they're designed to deliver value to the organization, and understanding of that value comes from understanding what the vision of the organization is, what its mission is, and its charter is. Just to give one simple example, you see here that one part of the charter is to cut waste to a minimum. That tells us whenever we're working on any service trying to understand value, that if there's a way in which the service creates waste, it is working against the interests of the organization. And if there's a way to reduce waste, it's working in favor of it. Similarly, with all of the other parts of the vision, mission, and charter, those with the policy allow us to understand what value the organization needs to deliver, and it allows the board to communicate that value to the organization, not just as one announcement, but as something that will be embedded in the actual operation of each service after that. ABC Retail decided to adopt service governance about a year ago. After communicating with stakeholders, letting staff know, letting suppliers know, letting shareholders know, making sure everybody was aware that they were taking this journey, they started the work of making the adoption real. They ran a short pilot on one or two services in order to get things right. And this is now the first quarter, the first 3 months in which the first draft, the first live version of the service portfolio has been used. This is the board here. You can see they have a services director which indicates how important they see services to the organization. And this little graph is showing how the stock has done of ABC Retail. As they say, it has to be adjusted as being a retail company to take out bumps that come from holidays and so forth. So it gives a better idea of how the stock itself has been performing year on year. This trend line shows that there's a distinct improvement in the stock over the rate of increase of the stock, rather, over the previous time period, which means that the adoption of service governance itself, even though the service portfolio has only just in this last 3 months come into being, has already improved the performance of the organization. This is not unusual, actually. A lot of things that happen in service governance do, just by doing them, improve the way the organization operates. This is where the organization is located. There are a number of outlets, large outlets, medium outlets, small outlets. As we can see, most outlets are running. There's one outlet that's being decommissioned, another one that's being revamped. This, by the way, what we're looking at and we'll be looking at is the view into the knowledge base of this organization that the board has got. Let's go look at the service portfolio itself. Now, the first thing we'll see is it's quite long. There are a lot of services in there. It's considerably less long and complicated, though, than the general ledger. So it allows a much easier approach to understanding how everything works. Let's see how that works in practice. So if you were a director wanting to understand services first time you came here, you could look at all of the services. You've got the name of the service, the value cost ratio. So for each service, it's showing how much value it delivers against the cost. It's actually sorted in that order. The risk the service has, and a measure of the volume. The term volume is used to give an idea of how active the service is. It's not necessarily transactions, but it's based on the idea of transactions. So the point of sale service you'd expect to be a very high volume service, and something like, what have we got here? External audit volume, very low. Only 5 it gives it. The service owner is one of the crucial things. Every service has a service owner, and the service owner is the person who is accountable to the board for that service. So if I didn't know, if I was a member of the board and I had no idea why order fulfillment, which is the service, happens to have such a value cost ratio, probably my best option would be to get hold of the service owner. And of course, you've got the service owner details back there if you want to get hold of the service owner. The service owner's details to find out. However, you can also look at the service itself, the service record. This gives a lot more detail than probably a director would want to know, including what we've just seen. It also gives details about the service itself, and it shows what locations the service is operating at. There's also a brief description giving a bit more idea of what the service is. An up-to-date description as well. It's not just a static description. So you have an idea of how the service is operating at the moment. Go back to the main service portfolio. After the service owner, the next important part is this thing called the service design package. This really is crucial. This is all of the information, design information, strategy information, operational information about a service, and the service design package follows the service throughout its life. So just to look at an example of order fulfillment, we can see that the service design package is made up of these different components. One is just the service contacts, the people you get in touch with, but the other parts are the continual improvement, what's being done to improve the service, how the service has been designed, information relevant to the governance of the service, the more detail about the governance, operation of the service, so events that have happened in the service, incidents, problems, things that are happening day to day, the strategy on which the service has been based on the corporate policy and charter, and finally the changes, the transitions. So if new branches are being built or decommissioned, that would be part of the service transition, all the changes. The status is given for all of these, so that clearly means different things. Service operation, that means that everything's running okay, there are no outages. Service transition, that would mean that all the changes that are happening are all going according to plan. So the service design package is one single place which links to every single bit of information about this service. Finally, on the right, for each service, we have the measure of value. How do we actually know what value the service is delivering? So in the case of order fulfillment, they're measuring that by repeat business. Remember, this service portfolio has only been here for 3 months, so we would expect, as we get more maturity and understanding of the service, that it would improve in terms of the measure and our understanding of how the service is operating. Usually, though, you don't want to look at the whole service portfolio. What we've got is a set of choices. You can look at it in terms of the highest value and cost. That actually is very much the same as what we've just looked at, but it's just the top several services. Lowest value and cost. Well, some things have a value-cost ratio of 0, which means that they're not delivering any value and they're costing money. Well, that's clearly not good. You can actually have negative value where a service is causing harm to an organization. So at least we haven't got any of negative value, but clearly we're going to have to look closely at these services to see why it is that they are doing so badly. You can also tell from the risk which ones you have to concentrate on. So point of sale management is reasonably high risk, 10 is the highest. And it's reasonably high volume, but its measure is the reduction in incidents. Well, maybe that's the wrong measure for point of sale management, that the number of times point of sale terminals go down isn't a good measure of it. So looking at the measures of value is one part of deciding how things are going. Or it could simply be that it's not actually performing. Interestingly, this one, management reports, is producing no value. It's low risk producing report, but fairly high volume. And what we can do is also look at the cost of it. So if we went to have a look at the high cost services, do we see that here? Well, we could just look at a little bit more of them down below. And okay, so management reports don't appear there. So at least they're not costing a fortune, even if they're not doing particularly well. Let's just go back to the highest value cost. This order fulfillment comes up very high. It's showing that there's 19 times the value given by the service to the cost. As I said already, it could be that the outliers, these ones right at the top, order fulfillment, are not accurate because we haven't got our measures right, or maybe the costs aren't being allocated correctly. There may be more costs than are being realized. So we would expect, as these are improved, that we get better values, but it could also be that that really is the case. This is actually producing extraordinary value to cost because it is possible to do it very cheaply with only a few people doing it, and it affects a large volume of goods. Anything over 1 is delivering more value than it is costing. So we see another interesting thing from the point of view of a director, that our large branches are in fact producing less value per cost than our medium branches. Well, it will be worthwhile working out why that is the case. You'd have thought there would be economies of scale in the large branches, and it will be worthwhile the director going to ask the service owner, saying, what is it about the large branches that means that they can't be better in performing than the medium branches. This is what the governance is about, is being able to ask questions about the delivery of value at a governance level to understand how they're contributing to the organization as a whole. This is also very close to the bottom line, this one, because it's actually receipts. It's the amount of money that comes in that's being measured here. The overall branch network is quite high. It's giving twice the value to cost, which is interesting when medium and large branches are only at 1. This is telling us that the small branches are really doing very well. If you remember from the main page, where they gave a list of all the locations, you can see that there are too large, 5 or so small, medium, and a lot of small branches. So all these small branches are actually doing better in delivering value than the medium and large branches. Well, because those other branches are such a big part of the business, it's important to see what can be learnt from the business of the small branches to try and replicate that in the value cost. The lowest value cost, as I said before, these are services which either you want to stop doing. Management reports might be one. If a lot of reports are being produced at cost and they're not actually improving anything, they're not making people happier, they're not improving value, they're not reducing cost, they're not reducing wastage, maybe we need to stop doing them. And immediately we'll save the money on not doing them. So one solution to poor value cost ratios is simply to remove the service. Other services, well, something like the store card service, which you would expect with customer information should be doing really well, is not. It's showing that customer retention is poor. Now, that's an important part of the operation, so we should be asking why this is not working. Do we need to have it relaunched or changed? What should we be doing to improve that? The highest risk services, whatever this is, master data management, down to security. These are all very risky, and the question is which ones are delivering good value. The riskiest one is the one with the highest volume, a poor low value cost ratio, and high risk. So whatever this master data management is, which should be delivering cost versus efficiency, we should be asking management to look into, because clearly it is not doing what it should be doing, and that's a big risk to the organization. High value, those services producing the most value. Well, you can see large branches are producing the greatest value, that's in terms of receipts, but as we know from before, they're not working as well as the small branches. So we should be able to improve that value considerably if we can learn from what the small branches are able to do. You'd expect economy of scale to improve value, not reduce it. I shouldn't really obviously be going into lots of detail about this fictitious company, but I'm doing it deliberately to draw attention to what decisions you can make just from understanding how the organization works in terms of cost and value. Already you can see we're getting quite a sharp focus on the areas where more governance is required. Management must be asked to look at these areas to try and improve the overall operation of the organization. Finally, high cost. Well, no surprise, these branches, large branches, come in as high cost because we know they have a poor cost-value ratio. But these other ones that are very costly services are ones that we might want to look at. We notice here, for example, that management is a very high cost, only delivering 0.06. Well, it could be that we need to improve our measure, but it could be that we need to also think about management and maybe compare how management in small branches is working compared to that in the medium and large branches. There may be improvements in efficiency and operation that management can put into place. I've only concentrated on a few services, and what I've really been trying to do is to show how this big picture view can allow us to go right in and make quite detailed decisions on the ground. Obviously, we could spend a lot more on this, but let's end our discussion by looking at an interesting part about the book, Adopting Service Governance, which is its word cloud. This word cloud has just been taken from the book itself. No surprise, service and governance come up very high. No surprise that under governance you have corporates and business coming up high, as well as management, organization and services. Naturally, value comes up very high. Cost doesn't come up so high, not because cost isn't important, but because cost is something that's very well understood. Many other areas take more work. Value takes a lot of work to understand what value you need to measure in order to get a good picture of the organization.